When my daughter was a toddler, she was very attached to me as I was very attached to her, and she would sometimes become absolutely inconsolable when I was leaving the house. And when she learned to talk a little bit, she would demand an explanation. Why are you leaving? And so I developed a kind of mantra. I said to her, Daddy has to go and fight sin. When she got a little older, she would even try to negotiate. Why can't Mommy go fight sin and you stay home? To which my mind literally exploded with witty repartee, but I managed to say something that was politically correct and donned my suit and tie, which is the clerical battle armor to go out and slay dragons. Now, when she's an adult now, these past several years living in Denver, she'll send me a text that just says, "What's up?" which is the length of conversation you have with a 20-something daughter. And I say, "Just fighting sin, baby." And we have managed to hold on to that for 28 years now, though in the last year, when I say it, I feel my heart sink a little bit because it's not as funny as it used to be. We have a new president who was not only enthusiastically endorsed by the KKK, let that sink in, but has recently been diagnosed by John Gartner, a registered psychotherapist from the renowned Johns Hopkins University Medical School, as being a malignant narcissist. And I know you're not supposed to diagnose someone that you haven't tested or actually had as a patient. He knows that. You're kind of breaking the rules, but the diagnostic criteria is out there. We may have a president who is mentally unstable and potentially dangerous.
Amen.
Scientists from the EPA, the Agriculture Department, Health and Human Services, National Parks, NASA, have all been told to not give the public scientific information about our environment, about global climate change, about even health hazards, or even hazards within our food supply. They've been told just not to make public statements. Controversial pipeline projects that will contribute to the destruction of the environment while placing our water supply in danger have been suddenly approved as we sat back and watched the complete destruction of the city of Aleppo, a city of more than 2 million people, setting off the worst refugee crisis in modern history. Now we have entirely closed our doors to Syrian refugees, even though no Syrian has ever been found guilty of any terrorist act against the United States. Now, in the time of their greatest need, our nation has closed its doors. Wheels have been set in motion to appoint Supreme Court justices who will roll back the rights of women to manage their own reproductive lives and the rights of gay and lesbian citizens to marry the person they love. Even after more than 2 decades as an opinion writer for the newspaper, I can hardly get anything into print these days because newspapers are afraid to criticize our current government. And that is not without good reason. Journalists have been arrested. Some have been beaten by the police and then sentenced to years in prison for reporting the news at Standing Rock in North Dakota, and recently at protests in the inauguration of President Trump. The legitimate protests of the Black Lives Movement are being dismissed as being somehow unfairly critical of the police without ever addressing the horrifying record of shooting and killing unarmed black men and women in this country.
Amen.
The wall that is now proposed to be built along our border with Mexico, even if it could be done, and frankly it can't be, would cost $25 billion. And the best idea Trump has for paying for it is to levy a 20% tax on imports from Mexico, which means that we will have to pay for it. That's not Mexico. You don't levy the tax on Mexico. You levy the tax on Americans. So it just means your fruit and vegetables and economy cars will cost more. As Andy Borowitz said, it's a good thing that our roads and schools are in such great shape. Otherwise, I'd be pissed. I sat early this week looking through the sound and bulletproof glass of the Greene County Jail at a very sick old man, Charles White, who's been in jail for 2 years awaiting a federal trial for growing marijuana near here. He's 76. He's nearly blind. He's in failing health. I had hoped that Charles would be among those that would be pardoned by President Obama during the closing days of his administration, but Charlie and nearly 1 million other nonviolent offenders remains incarcerated in our country. In county jails, conditions are often much worse than what prisoners in Guantanamo Bay are subjected to. Here, just 4 miles from our church, just 4 miles from here, hundreds of inmates are being kept in tiny cells that were built to hold 2 people for a brief amount of time. Some are being held there for years with 3 and 4 people to a cell, so much that there's not even room for all 4 of them to lie down at one time. When there's 4 people in a cell, one sleeps propped up against the toilet. The heat hasn't worked this winter at the Greene County Jail. You haven't seen that in the paper, but temperatures in the jail have been in the 40s and 50s most of the winter. They no longer provide any fresh vegetables, fruit, or meat. Everything is canned. If the Humane Shelter housed dogs and cats this way, the employees of the Humane Shelter, ironically, would be sentenced to several years in the Greene County Jail. But decent people don't treat dogs and cats like this. But somehow our government treats sick old men this way. So now when I leave home to go fight sin, I hardly know where to start. Should I go to the Women's March? Should I go to my senator's office to protest this new refugee policy? Should I go back to Standing Rock to join the water protectors once again? The quixotic mantra of mounting my steed, taking lance in hand, and going forth to fight sin that once brought a smile to my toddler's face now sometimes leaves me very sad and frankly wondering if I might not be on Charlie White's side of the glass at Greene County Jail before this year is finished. This fight is no longer a matter of metaphor. It's real, and the stakes are very high. I'm finding a role model in these days in the Standing Rock Sioux tribe member, Chase Iron Eyes. Like the rest of us, Chase isn't perfect, and he's struggling to find his legs in the shifting earth of the fight against the DAPL pipeline. But what he is bringing to the battle is a maturity and depth of character that I find inspiring. The tribal elders of the Sioux tribe at Standing Rock have accepted defeat. They have asked the people in the camps to disperse. They don't want the pipeline to be finished, but the protest has caused DAPL to barricade the road that leads to the casino, which is the only source of employment and income for the reservation. And the tribal elders are responsible for distributing the necessary resources to keep several of their unemployed tribal members alive. And so they've accepted defeat and asked the camp to move so that they can reopen the road to the casino. Allowing DAPL to finish the pipeline will hopefully bring more money to the tribe. Iron Eyes has patiently and lovingly been respectful of his tribal elders. He's always tried to see their side of the issues. He has refused to condemn them. He's discouraged others from saying critical things about the tribal elders, even while he continues to insist that he's going to stay at the camp, and he is encouraging others to do the same. And he has insisted that on the camp there could be no weapons, nothing that anyone could interpret as being a weapon, that there be no alcohol, no drugs, and no violence in the camp. At any of their civil disobedience events, they are not to fight back. He has learned a lesson from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., realizing that when the world sees police shooting rubber bullets, security guards throwing tear gas canisters, or releasing attack dogs on peaceful protesters, that image does more for their cause than fighting back ever could. When images of bloodied Indians, veterans, and supporters being arrested, and this is no exaggeration, when the winter months began and they were arresting so many people, they decided to house them in outdoor dog kennels. But when those images make it into the media, the Indians can win a moral battle. And in the long arc of time, that's the battle you have to win. Even if the pipeline is built, even if they lose the larger conflict, we have to win the moral battle. You literally, as Father Daniel Berrigan said during the Vietnam War protest, sometimes you have to bait the trap for evil with your own flesh. There is something about redemptive suffering. As Martin Luther King and his followers knelt on sidewalks and peacefully received the bites of attack dogs, the blows of police billy clubs, now Chase Iron Eyes is asking the water protectors to remain unarmed and peaceful in the face of a militarized police force that regularly attacks them. This is a matter of character. But character of this sort never happens by accident. It doesn't come into existence because you're just that kind of person. You don't stumble into being willing to take a beating without resistance to make a point. That is one of the most disciplined and difficult paths that anyone can choose, because fighting back is our most basic instinct. Redemptive suffering is a choice of advanced civilization over evolution. We evolved to run or fight. We never evolved to kneel down and take it. They've just raised the stakes in North Dakota. On Thursday of this week, Representative Keith Kemenick, and I don't care if I mispronounce his name because I've called him other things at home. He introduced a bill in the North Dakota legislature that states that if a driver unintentionally causes injury or death to someone blocking traffic on one of their North Dakota roads, that the driver will be held harmless. That is, those of us who stand in the street to protest, that if someone decides to run over us, they have to say, "Didn't see him." And there's no legal charges. They can murder us for protesting. No legal charges. Welcome to Trump's version of America. I have a biblical text this morning. It's taken me an uncommonly long time to get to it. I know you don't mind. It was printed in the liturgy. We heard Dr. Adams read the Beatitudes from the 5th chapter of Matthew. This is a text that most of us were taught when we were children. It's sort of a wish list, isn't it, for young Christians, that if you would do these things, that God's going to bless you and you're going to grow up to be a nice, polite, submissive, obedient person. Matthew's list of blessings is a cleaned up version of a passage in Luke. I'll differ with my good friend Bishop Spong on this. I'm convinced that Matthew copied this material out of Luke, and he made it much more religious. Luke doesn't just have a list of blessing. Luke has blessings and curses side by side. Blessed are the poor, and pretty much damn the rich. He has woes, which is a Koine Greek way of cursing at someone. But Matthew lists, my professors at seminary said Matthew's organized around 5 discourses, which the book of Deuteronomy is organized around 5, and that the Beatitudes were the new Decalogue, the 10 Commandments of the New Testament. I find that hard to believe that it's all that contrived. There's only 9 of them. I have to think that he could count to 10. But of the Beatitudes, blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the weak. Blessed are the merciful. Blessed are the pure in heart. Blessed are the peacemakers. I preached my very first sermon when I was 16 years old at the First Christian Church in Glasgow, Kentucky, on this text. I did manage to take off on the peacemakers line and turn it into an anti-Vietnam War sermon. My father didn't speak to me for a month. I was just a kid. What did I know, right? But I would argue that being a peacemaker, being meek, being pure in heart, being merciful, does not mean that you are simply a nice person or a passive person or someone who never rocks the boat. Naomi Schulman wrote, following our election day in November, that this is just no time to be nice. She said, "Nice people made the best Nazis, or so I've been told. My mother was born in Munich in 1934 and spent her childhood in Nazi Germany surrounded by nice people who refused to make waves. When things got ugly, the people my mother lived alongside chose not to focus on politics, instead busying themselves with happier things. They were lovely, kind people who turned their heads as their neighbors were dragged away." You see, religion has often been used to make us nice, because nice is compliant, nice goes along, nice lets a totalitarian government take control. And even some of our best friends are saying to us now, "I just don't watch the news, it upsets me. I just don't want to think about it." I think that these days call for character. These days ask of us to be peacemakers, to be merciful, to be meek, to be pure of heart, but they demand that we are not passive. Peaceful, but not passive. Nonviolent, but not obedient. We saw in Martin Luther King and Dorothy Day and the Berrigan brothers, and now I'm seeing in Chase Iron Eyes this depth of character, but a total commitment to revolutionary living that does not let evil prevail in the world through our silence. The novelist Laurel Hamilton said in one of her fiction novels, The Stroke of Midnight, one of her characters said, "My father had taught me to be nice first, because you can always be mean later. But once you've been mean to someone, they won't believe the nice anymore. So be nice. Be nice until it's time to stop being nice, then destroy them." It's not my place to tell you what to do when you leave here today, but I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go fight sin. I'm going to defend the rights of women, of gay folk, of Indians, of Syrians, of Muslims and Mexicans. I'm going to fight poverty and racism and discrimination and unemployment. I'm going to fight to protect the earth, to make education available to the poor, to defend the water, and to expand health care. And fortunately, since I live alone, I can stay out late.
Thank you for watching our videos. We are entirely dependent on the donations of our listeners and members. We hope that you find this content to be important enough to help us to keep offering these videos to the public at no charge by becoming a regular contributor. Please click on the donate button on our website at www.spfccc.org. Thank you for your support of progressive religious programming.